Hello and welcome to IAFA Insider. I'm Ryan, and before we get into the meat of the show, I just want to apologise for the lack of a show last week. We had planned on doing a preview of the Rebels and the Knights in their playoff game. Our apologies to both teams, Anthony who was looking forward to that. The good news is we will have a preview next week of the Shamrock Bowl semi-finals, and we'll be discussing that in a bit more detail about the arrangements of that with our guest today, Maurice Cosgrave even. But first, we're going to talk to Maurice about the big event this weekend, which of course is in Tallaght Stadium. It's the IAFA Atlantic Cup. Belfast Trojans recently got listed at number 20 in the IAFA club ranking, so that gives a bit of interesting side note to this tournament coming up. But first off, Maurice, welcome to the show.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, Maurice. So, huge weekend for the IAFA this weekend, naturally enough. It's the first of really, I suppose, 3 or 4 big events we've got coming up this summer. We're just going to focus, of course, on this one, the Atlantic Cup itself. 4 teams coming over. Well, so 4 teams playing. The Belfast Trojans and Trinity representing the IFL. And, of course, we have the Amersfoort Untouchables. My apologies, Rowan, for the violent mispronunciation. From the Netherlands. And the Brussels Tigers, which I can safely pronounce being from Belgium. So, Maurice, I suppose the tournament itself, why is it important for us to really just get involved in this European level?
Well, I think, like I said, the Atlantic Cup itself is only 5 years old, and this is the 5th year it's kind of happened, and I think it's a really good opportunity for Irish teams to first of all play against other European teams in this kind of recognised competition, but also gives other teams a chance to see what other competition is like. And I think some teams get the opportunity to play against European sides and experience football across Europe individually, and they organise it with people that they know and teams they know. But this is a really kind of focused competition that at a European level that all teams can get involved in. And just, I suppose, I don't really want to use this aspire, but it just gives teams the opportunity to try out against some other competition, some different competition. All of our teams are experienced now with everyone else in our league, so having a bit of variety and being able to see what our teams across Europe are like is a huge benefit for them, I think.
And before we get into the game itself, I suppose one thing that stood out to me is with the Trojans playing, they have one of the deepest sides in terms of the roster they can call on at any time. We've seen the IAFL in a long time, and you and I both played for several years, and we spoke with Sam Monson a couple of weeks ago, and Sam was saying he was very impressed by the size they have across the board, and also the sheer depth they have in numbers. Given it's 2 games in 2 days, do you think that's going to be a big factor for Belfast?
I think so. I mean, as with any kind of travelling team, we'll know, traveling especially from another country over here, you're going to have a slightly reduced roster potentially, and obviously the home teams, if we can call them that, are they understand how to get here. They can travel in force, and I think will also have an impact is that they'll have their supporters with them. Is a lot easier to get down here. So I certainly think that the fact that, as you say, the Trojans have a large squad and large players as well, it'll certainly have an impact on the way the game goes. And as I said at the start, they're ranked pretty high in the European rankings, But on the flip side, I think the teams from the Netherlands and from Brussels, I think the Brussels Tigers, I just read during the week that they won the Belgian Bowl, earlier this week or last week. So they're the champions in Belgium, and obviously the Amersfoort Untouchables did the same last year. They're champions of their league last year, I believe it was. So it kind of, taking both those things into account, I think it'll be a really competitive weekend. I personally don't think I could call it. So yeah, I think the size of the Trojans, but also the fact that the European teams coming over, they're good squads, and they're at the highest levels of their own federations.
And so it's looking at the 2 games that we know for certain that'll take place, because obviously we won't know the final and third place playoff until the semis have been played. First off, it's the Untouchables, who you mentioned, earlier had a great season in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Of course, the Dutch team in it last year, Lelystad,
Mm.
won the title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're playing the Trojans first, and then Trinity, who of course won the regular season in the IFL South.
Mm.
They played Brussels Tigers, who of course are recently crowned champions of Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting pair of matchups, I think it's fair to say.
I think it is, yeah. And I think it is. I think it's a fair matching too. I think the Trojans being our league champions from last year versus the Dutch champions from last year, and then like I said, just recently the Tigers winning their league again against Trinity. So I think they're really good matchups. I think as they worked out, and again I don't think any team can call the game a walkover. I think it'll be really interesting football, and it'll be a good kind of set of games to watch, and I think it'll be interesting to see who gets through to the games on Sunday. I think it'll be. I think if you kind of want to see some good football matches, I think this is a prime example of that, and a really good opportunity to catch it. So.
And just looking for the summer ahead, because obviously this is really kicking off, I suppose, American football's encampment in Tallaght Stadium.
Yeah.
We have these 4 games this coming weekend. Shamrock Bowl obviously coming soon enough. And then, of course, we'll have the American teams over later in the summer. So I suppose it's a really good chance for the association to encamp itself in that part of West Dublin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've as you know yourself, we've used Tallaght Stadium a number of times over the last couple of years, and I mean the guys in there are great at helping to bring these games in here, and they're willing to kind of help us do that. And it's a great stadium as well. I think there's been if we talk about the Atlantic Cup, there hasn't really been, to the best of my knowledge, a full stadium atmosphere for Atlantic Cup so far as there will be this year. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, with the Atlantic Cup in the stadium, the Shamrock Bowl again in the stadium, and the US Games, the Gathering Bowl later on in the year, I think making Tallaght Stadium a bit of a home base for football is a nice call, and something that if anyone really wants to watch football, they know where to go. It'll be in Tallaght Stadium. So.
And of course, one of the things to bear in mind this weekend, it will be free admission. We will give you the time of the fixtures, but it's Saturday and Sunday. Games at 12 and 3:30 both days. We'll give the detailed fixtures at the end of the show. Morris, of course, one of the events we were hoping to have in Tallaght Stadium, but there is a fixture clash, so we can't. But it has been moved to a same site for both games. Is of course the upcoming Shamrock Bowl semi-finals. Just for people interested in that, just break down, sort of, I suppose, what's going to be happening when they take place.
Well, as you say, it was unfortunately there was a clash. There's a fixture on a Monday in Tallaght Stadium that kind of caused us to have to kind of shift things around a bit. So it'll be in the Garda RFC in Westminster. That is the Dublin Dragons home pitch. Top class facilities as well. So I think for the teams playing in the semi-finals, they're still going to get a really nice environment to play their games in. Fans again are still going to get a nice environment to be able to watch and follow their teams down there. So yeah, and again it'll be free entry into that too. And I don't think we'll be doing a ticketed kind of sort of event. But yeah, so that's where it is now, and I think it should still be a great set of games.
Now we'll be doing a full preview of these games next week, but just to give a look at the quick pairings, I suppose, in terms of the attraction. First off, the early game starting at noon will be the Trojans, who we were discussing just a moment ago. They'll play the Vikings in a rematch of last year's Shamrock Bowl. So I suppose it's a chance for the Vikings, who made it to the playoffs but didn't win the South as they were expected at the start of the season, to possibly go out there and really make a statement.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think again, like as I said earlier on, it'll be a good matchup. So it'll be, I think it'll be a close game, and I think in fairness for both, I think even with the Rebels Trinity game, I think it'll be still a kind of a tight game to call. I think Trinity has done a lot of really good work this season so far, seems to be. So obviously Rebels have that kind of long history as well of an excellent team. So yeah, I think again with both fixtures really interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see kind of who moves through to the finals, and again it should be a good opportunity to catch some really good football.
And sorry, guys, there for the trouble with Morris's mic. We are working on that.
Oh, sorry.
And just as Morris is saying, the second game is Trinity College against the Dublin Rebels, who, despite being different divisions, worked out as being the top two ranked Dublin teams in the Shamrock Bowl Conference this year. Trinity, of course, winning the South. The Rebels coming second in the North. So it is a Dublin derby in a quite neutral venue for the two sides, it has to be said, given that their home venues are also next door to each other.
Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, both really far away from my house. Quite like Westmanstown in that respect.
Yeah, like myself.
Exactly. And they'll be taking place on Sunday week, isn't that right, Morris?
Yeah, this July 7th, I believe it is, yeah.
And as Morris is saying, they'll be free in, and the kickoff for the first game is at noon. Promises to be a pretty good afternoon as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Morris, I suppose, finally, what I want to ask you is, like, have you got any advice for anyone who may be bringing someone new to the games, to the sport, along on Saturday and Sunday, like, just, how they can help make their friends enjoy the atmosphere more, I suppose?
Sure. Well, like I said, this game, the Atlantic Cup and the later game, the Gathering Bowl with the US teams, both of these are part of the Gathering Dublin series of events. So it's a perfect opportunity to really bring friends and family, especially from outside the country, to the stadium to watch a game and kind of get involved. And I think, like I said, we've always tried to make games as open as possible and as accessible to everybody, to everyone that we can. And the fact that over the next couple months or next few months, you're going to see a lot of different levels of football. So for somebody new to the sport, you're going to see European type football. You're going to see our own league in the Shamrock Bowl, and you're going to see more US style football. Teams from the States coming over and playing and how they play, and see the differences and see what it's all about. So, for people new to the sport, this is a really, really good time to introduce them to it, and they can see the type of football that's played, at an amateur level across the world, really, and be able to pick up the sport. Be able to pick up the sport and become a fan of the sport. And
before we get to the results and fixtures for the weekend ahead, that dovetails nicely into a shameless plug for my own site, Action81.com, which will have a CFL preview, the Canadian Football League, up on Thursday morning with Yahoo's Andrew Buckle. So be sure to check that out because I'm great. And before I let Morris go, we are going to go through the results and fixtures. There was one game played at the weekend. That was the Mullingar Minotaurs at the Tullamore Phoenix. The Phoenix won 12 points to 8. And there are 3 games that was an IFL 1, and there are 3 games ahead for the July 14th weekend, which of course is the weekend after the Shamrock Bowl semi-finals. That'll see the Tullamore Phoenix at the Dublin Dragons in Garda FC Westmanstown, Waterford Wolves at the Mullingar Minotaurs in Harbour Field, and North Kildare Reapers at Meath Bulldogs in Navan Rugby Club. All of those games, which again are 3 weeks away, will kick off at 2 p.m. And of course, the big one this weekend, though, the main reason we're talking this week, it's the only reason Martin and I are even in communication, is the Atlantic Cup, which has its semi-finals and finals. And the semi-finals will be on Saturday, that's the 29th of June. The first game is at midday in Tallaght Stadium. Amersfoort Untouchables of the Netherlands against Belfast Trojans. And then at 3:30, Trinity College Dublin against the Brussels Tigers of Belgium. Then the next day, once again in Tallaght Stadium for the double header, we'll have the third place playoff. Again at midday, it'll be for that game kicking off. And the final will kick off at 3:30. That's on Sunday the 30th of June. And of course, we'll be discussing the Shamrock Bowl semi-finals in the next week's show, when we hope to have players from the losing teams in the early rounds of the playoffs on the show to talk with us. If not, I'll wing it some way. But for now, as ever, for Action 81 and for the IAFA, this has been IFA Insider. Thank you for joining us.